Good afternoon. This is Suxinity Channel on Education. As teachers, we all have had awkward or embarrassing situations sometimes, and but sometimes somehow we have overcome them. So, what can we do to anticipate, if at all, embarrassing situations? What can we do in order to provide good atmosphere in class? What can we do after the class to ensure good atmosphere for the following class? We're going to talk about it with Billy and Paulina here in Barcelona. Nanaro is in Madrid today, and Graham Bell again in Barcelona. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? So, well, my name is Radmila Gurkova, so let's get started. First of all, who is responsible, according to you, for a good atmosphere in class?
Well, I mean, for me personally, it's probably 50-50.
Okay.
Obviously, you can take a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So we have to provide the energy based on the time of the day
Yeah.
or the vibes that they have if they're at work, if they're at home. But at the same time, obviously, they've got to try and contribute as much as possible,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Paulina, what about you?
I think the teacher is the one who has to control the atmosphere, but of course, to have a good class, to have a class that you both will enjoy, you're both responsible.
Yeah.
If the student is not very open, or you're not going to have a good class in a way. But yeah, the teacher is the one who should structure the class and control the flow.
Excellent. Nanaro, from your experience, who is responsible for a good atmosphere?
Well, I agree. I think it's 50-50. But as well, I think like the teacher has the most of the responsibility because of course if you go there with a mood or something, it's just not gonna work and you're just gonna make the student make uncomfortable. But sometimes you go there with your best mood and you try to do the best, but you get a student who is not up for it. So then it gets a bit tricky.
Okay. Graham, what's your advice or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's down to the teacher. I think we can control the classroom environment. Even when we go into someone's office, we can choose where we're sitting, or we can try and move it a little bit. I certainly think of classes in bars and cafes. I remember trying to teach a class right under a speaker, and they were blasting out hip hop, and I was like, okay, we need to move, and making sure that I'm facing the window so that they're paying attention to me, not looking at the window. Because there's things that we can do, but yeah, sometimes you go to a class and the student's tired, and that's tough. That's
Yeah.
hard to deal with.
Yeah, but in any case, Graham, you said something important that let's say that you work on the class setting before the class starts. Okay, so that's
Yeah,
that's part of your preparation.
absolutely.
Okay. Have you guys had the feeling that sometimes instead of a group, you have just random people there, even though they know each other? And how does that affect the rhythm of the class and the class dynamics?
Yeah, definitely had groups where they're all friends, and then I've had groups where they're all from different departments or whatever, and they're just there to have a class together. So in these cases, I found that the class is more productive if they don't know each other, because you end up doing more activities.
Really?
Because if they can chat, then they're chatting about their hobbies, things they did on the weekend, or even the topic. The topic activities last longer. If they don't know each other, they kind of just do the structure, do the vocabulary, and then maybe they'll start discussing with them themselves about the topic. But yeah, I find that my classes are more productive if they don't know each other.
Really? And with you, Billy?
I haven't had much experience with groups that don't know each other. The only thing I might have similar to that is where one person loves sports, one person really doesn't, and then there's a topic or an activity about one or the other.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and mediate that and engage the one that clearly doesn't care about it, So you might use things of if I had to, or I would rather, I would prefer.
Okay.
But it's more about interests, not so much them being different
Right.
in terms of not knowing each other.
And what about you guys, Nanaro and Graham?
Yeah, well, I do agree it doesn't really help if they know each other, especially with kids and teenagers. This is the worst
Mm.
you can have because they're going to be talking a lot and they're not really going to doing what they want them to do. So yeah.
So better
Yeah.
not to have them like, okay, well,
What do you do in these situations?
yeah.
How would you handle that if it's a group of teenagers who don't want
Yeah, I
to
mean,
do
it's
that
very
work?
tough, especially with teenagers. Like, and they are the ones I've got more experience with actually, and it's like a specific solution that works for every group. Sorry. So, I mean, you can try and get that you know that they like, or if you have tried certain activities before that have worked well, then you can adapt them for what you're going to do that day, for example.
Okay.
So, do you agree? Because it seems that, or when I listen to teachers sharing their experiences, sometimes it feels that we always try to be attentive and try to adapt and talk about what they're interested in. Is that really the case? Do we have to care so much about their interests, or we have to stick more to what we have originally planned and try to pursue our objectives? What do you think?
I think
I
what
think
matters
you have
the
to
most.
care.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry, Nanaro, you were saying?
No, I was gonna say that I think you do have to care about it because you want them to enjoy the class.
But would they not enjoy the class even if they don't know much about it? The learning element, so they will be learning something new, so that's also enjoyable.
Yeah, it's true.
If you can do both, do it. If you can't, you don't need a personal trainer or a teacher who's always going to make things the nice, fun, easy way. You can if you have like one intense class, the next week maybe you can be a bit more, trying to go towards their interests. But they have to accept that you're looking out for them in the long term.
It's just that I've been hearing lately that it's all about their interests, but I also think that we have a role as teachers to spark interest as well in something that they may not be aware of sometimes. So I wonder to what extent, Graham, help us, or from your experience, what would you say?
I think it's a bit of both, but I can explain why. I think we have to go fundamentally with the syllabus, and if there's a grammar point to teach or make sure they understand it, then that's important. But as you're saying, the role of the teacher is to make it interesting. I mean, once you know your student, you literally can take any piece of what it is and apply it to them. If you know a little bit about them, if they've got kids, you can get them to talk about the kids. If it's their job, you can talk about the job. If they like football, you can take the possession, for example, across all three of those interests. You can always bespoke it to repeat. You just got to be on the ball and really, really well prepared. And the better you know your student and you know what their interests are, then you should be able to quite quickly change it. Well, I think so anyway.
Yeah, okay. So, in any case, what can we do before the class so that we anticipate, if at all, some awkward situations?
Prepare well. First of all, prepare the activities, know the target language, know the vocabulary, think about the possible questions you might get asked, especially for teachers who are not native. That needs to be prepared, definitely. And I don't know what else, just prepare.
Plan for more. Do you plan for more, or usually you stick to what is in the class?
I usually stick to the activities that I'm given, but I try to also, by doing these activities, I see what the student needs to work on. So I make extra notes and then use my own notes and
Okay, yeah,
you know what I mean? Combine it with the activity that I already have.
fair enough. But no matter how much you plan, what can go wrong? Have you had anything? I guess. Any,
Personality clashes
yeah.
could happen.
But between the teacher and the student, or between the student?
Both.
Yeah, you can't be 100% prepared for something as diverse as a class with 2 or 3 or 4 people. One thing I think that's really important is never to talk about a topic that could be sensitive, like in terms of if you've got a larger or a body conscious student in a group of 5 people, don't talk about my weight is however many kilos.
Okay.
And yesterday I had an activity on self-harm. And again, it's something to be mindful of,
Yes.
because if you're with young people and there's any chance, even 1%, that someone in there is affected by that, you may not even want to talk about that too much. Go for a different topic.
But I think that's kind of up to the teachers to think about before they create this activity. If you're you have to think about all the teachers, not just whether I'm going to be able to teach that to my students.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I remember there was activity about underwear, all the different types of underwear. Like, I remember going to class with a hotel manager and opening that up, and as soon as he saw the pictures, he said,
Not
next
with me.
one, next one. He was
Yeah.
nice about it, but obviously you're not going to want to talk about these things. And obesity as well, or body problems or things like that. Maybe we should stay away from creating these type of activities. I don't know. We can do the vocabulary, for example, in a scientific text. We could get a research or something for the vocabulary, but not discussing weight and stuff like that.
Yeah, but then how do you, okay, I agree, but then how do we activate that vocabulary? If it's, through what type of questions, how do we ask them?
I mean, you can
Good
talk about
question.
social media and Instagram and pressures without
Yeah.
going into the depth of self-harm.
Yeah.
Because anyone who's worked with people, I guess, you never know someone's problems or background.
Exactly.
And the target language can often be implemented in a different or safer environment. You just don't want to get caught off guard.
Yeah, of course.
Because you might not realize in the moment if there's someone sitting over there really affected by
Yeah.
it. And
No, of course.
it's, you can't know for sure.
No, you cannot. Have you had situations like that? Like when you said something and you realized, oh, that was wrong? Yes. Do you want to tell us?
I had a group class in a lawyer firm, and there were maybe 10 of them, and it's a big group. I'm not used to, first of all, teaching such big groups, and I was well prepared for the class, but when I showed up, the internet connection was not working, and it was 1 hour and a half class. So obviously I'm stressing inside, being like, oh my God, I have no activities. I don't know these people. It was the first class. I have no internet. What can I talk about? That's that they can all talk about, that they all know about. So I said, guys, I haven't read the news recently. Can you update me? What is happening with the independence? And one student just went like, Joder. So straight away I realized that was wrong, I should have not asked that. But then I kind of fixed the situation by saying, look, I'm not asking for personal opinions, just tell me the facts. We can do vocabulary on that kind of. So yeah.
Nice save.
Yes, I had to, because they start saying that, look, you can't ask these questions in work. We don't want to share our personal opinions with people we don't really know. I was like, relax, guys. Just the facts, just the facts.
But that's quite significant, because that means that, okay, you are prepared. Without the activities, the class is just a conversation.
Exactly.
Conversation with no value.
Exactly.
So, well, in this case, you couldn't help it.
Yes, I was a bit stuck, but in any way, I think activities are important to do, because if it's only a conversation, I know we're doing conversational classes, but if it's only a conversation, then at the end, what's the difference between language exchange for free and a class that you're paying for? If the student walks out with nothing, just a thought that, oh yes, I had a lovely chat with Paulina there today, well, what's the point?
I agree. I've said times, yeah, if I were to, so it's very expensive to have an teacher. But if I were to have a conversation class with someone, just buy me a beer. It's a lot cheaper.
Exactly.
There is a perfect, I'm so what I do, and you pay for me to go through activities and make sure you learn, not just chit
Exactly.
chat.
And it's easy to get into the habit of coming to class, sitting down and having a chat and thinking that yes, they're learning a lot of new vocabulary, they're talking, so that's great. But in the end, what did they learn in this class?
But I find if you look at the grammar, even you start like your quick questions or whatever, you can force them or you can use it yourself and just constantly use that structure when you're talking to them to see if they understand.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
you can't put purpose to it.
From experience, I'm not going to lie. I have classes where I do not do activities, but I make sure that I'm listening to the tenses they're using, to the prepositions and so on, and I write it all down, and then I leave half an hour, for example, of the class to explain the rules, the vocabulary, the expressions, make them use the structures they learned in examples and so on. So even though we do have a chat for a little bit, I make sure that there's structure, there's vocabulary, there's tenses learned.
And was that under the student request or it was your choice?
Just there are some classes where students prefer to chatting to doing activities, but I try to do the activity without having my tablet beside me. So in my head, maybe I remember that there was an activity on prepositions or whatever. So I won't use the tablet, but I'll say okay and or pronouns, whatever it is. I'll make sure I'll mention it in class. I make sure I check if they know it or not.
I just wonder
You're
why...
trying to keep it natural.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
No, Graham, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just going to prepare you. But if you're prepared, like Paulina is, you're going, okay, I know exactly what the activities are. And you know what you're supposed to be teaching. You can use your own instincts to make it more natural. For me, that's fine. I think that's great. It's more direct method than anything else, and communicative method. It's like going, okay, but you're still following this. You're still making sure you learn and you're ticking things off.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I think one of the things you were saying really was that if it's got a theme, if the theme is teaching this structure around football and they're not interested in football, you have to change it anyway to teach them.
I don't know that. I don't know. Yes and no, because again, so we say if they're not interested, then we have to change. Maybe adapt it up to a certain extent, but
Adapt, yeah.
Who would change? What if you have a textbook, an exercise? So exercises in textbooks are not thought to please anyone. They're thought to be effective. So are our activities. So this is to a certain extent risky to change something. You think you improve it, but you actually spoil it. So I just want to understand if it's because the student wants it that way or because there is a problem in the class or something kind of.
I think that if you click onto the Teachers tab, it says students should understand the difference between should and could.
But they don't.
And the activity or the vehicle for that is potentially about football.
Right.
The goal is them to know should and could.
Yeah.
So you're not going to keep going down the wrong road. So it's about the bottom line. What are the objectives? Because as you say, I find that some students don't appreciate the detail. That outside of our safe classroom, if they're in a hostile environment, you go to London and you have a not so nice checkout person or taxi driver, these should and could differences are going to be more relevant. So you have to get the point across, but the vehicle is, for me, more malleable.
Yeah. Do you guys agree? How do you feel about it, Nanara, for instance?
Yeah, I do agree. And as well, I think that there are some things that you can make neutral. Like maybe it doesn't have to be football specifically, because if you get a woman or a girl, maybe they are not interested. But you can do something more neutral, like traveling or something
but that's the thing that because someone changed a very well planned class for talking about traveling, we had a big trouble. So again, I mean, I was telling you before in the meeting that that was exactly what the teacher did in class. So she said, okay, I'm not teaching these activities and I'm going to talk about traveling. And on the next day, I was called at their premises and saying, what's going on here? We're having a conversation, a cafeteria conversation. So do you really think that changing things? I understand why you are doing it, because maybe football is maybe we talk about football and they're, oh no, I know nothing about it. But are we able to convey the message that it's not about football, it's about that language that you should practice? Are we able to do that, or we back off and we're immediately okay, so traveling, for instance.
No, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
I think
No.
if you're not
I agree.
110% confident that you have the ability to improvise, then stick to the content. But I honestly think, like 2 days ago, I had a grammar activity on rather,
Right.
and it was a couple. They had a playful ambience between us,
Yeah.
and we looked on the internet and found, would you rather lose the ability to lie or believe everything you were told? But they're getting what they were supposed to get from that class.
Okay.
But if it's dangerous,
Yeah.
don't freestyle.
All right. Perfect.
I think adapt. I think that's the word. The adapt thing. Two ways you can do it, because you want to present and practice it with them in the same theme. And if it's a food, you could always say, okay, well, let's do all of the. I'm going to teach you it in this theme. But when you come to the end, your practice and some production, and then you can adapt it to what's more appropriate to them. And you can say that to them. Just be like, okay, I know you're not interested. This is not your thing, but let's learn it like this. And then afterwards, I'm going to show you how you can use it in something that you like. You can adapt it. You can twist it with the production at the end. I wouldn't abandon the activity completely.
I think we all do the same. It's just that probably when we make our choices, we take into consideration one type of things over the other. That's it. But I'm sure that we're on the same page here. In any case, Graham, we have some comments from teachers. Do you want to?
Yes.
Do you want to share?
yeah. We've got some good ones. Just on how we anticipate some of these situations. And both Paul and John were straight on. It's just preparation. Prepare. John was pretty blunt. I liked it. He said, I don't thousands of miles for a plan to collapse on me. I'm a businessman, and a teacher prepares the same way. I've got to expect the worst and hope for the best, which is cute. I like that. I thought that was good. In terms of some difficult situations, Beverly walked into a class where one of our students had previously fired the other student in the class.
Oh God.
And yeah.
That can seriously damage the atmosphere.
We had another gave birth, and the teacher became the midwife. Definitely had some.
Hold on a second.
We don't have much more details, but
That's enough to go there. I be the common thought. Some of the people were talking about language and the type of vocabulary, and it can be difficult to teach. And there was two different comments, both sides of the spectrum. One was from Mark saying we should never be teaching swear. They shouldn't be part of the activities. Whereas we have Joe say this is language and I think it's important for them to be able to learn to express themselves in all ways. What do you guys think about that?
I actually have something to say about that. With the whole bitch thing.
oh yeah.
Fortunately, bitch also means female dog, so you've got that like get out of jail free card. But when I'm bringing it up, I say, well, it's important we don't say bad words in English by accident. If they start to chuckle, you can sort of see it's a safer environment to use that word and teach them don't say it like that. If they seem offended by it, or like this is a really formal classroom, let's not mess around, you say, for that precise reason, we have to make sure we don't talk about pronunciation problems and swear
Yeah.
words.
Yeah, I think you have to do that actually just to avoid what you said, that they
Yes.
mispronounce something and it
I would
becomes what it
totally
isn't.
teach them and make sure they have the pronunciation right as well.
Yeah.
Just to make sure. I've had a problem with the word sheet, and the other one, I'm sure you know what it
Yeah.
is. And they just kept sounding the same, the both words. I didn't leave the class until she could differentiate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, what about, okay, so if the awkward situation or the embarrassing situation still happens, what can we do? I mean, humor is usually something that we use, and yeah, but is just humor? Is there something else we can do?
I think all teachers need to have this one skill to be able to think on their feet. And I think this is what helps you in these situations. It's never just one thing that you can do when this happens. Okay, humor is probably one way to go, but
Yeah.
you just have to have the people skills as well, I guess.
Anyway,
There's an interesting. One of the teachers insulted nationality during the class, and he let it slip during the class, but afterwards just approached the student saying that's not appropriate to insult either myself or any other student in class, which I thought was a really good way to handle it. What do you guys think?
It's interesting actually, because I have a problem with the differences of terms to describe races in Spain
okay.
compared to in England.
Okay.
And I leave no
Yes.
illusions about that.
Okay, so tell us about
Explain.
it. Yeah.
For example, I'm sure we're all aware there's different ways to refer to certain types of shops and certain types of people and certain types of races, whether it's takeaways or things like that.
Okay.
If I advocate language in your target language that is going to get you in big trouble in an English-speaking country, I assume, I got that choice. I can tell you in the moment if it permits that, if I can talk about that. But it's my job to let people know, that this is acceptable. And the same with your example. If you tell them afterwards, or I understand it here, we express things like that. Where I'm from, just be careful because it's a big thing. One word could change your whole day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes it feels like teachers are scared to correct or to stop the class and say, just stop for a second, there's something important I need to explain here because I feel like this is important, and you should not be scared to do that and to correct, and don't be scared that the student will get offended by you correcting them. That's what you're there for. They have 1 hour a week with you. Make the most out of the hour,
Yeah, I agree. So even if something goes wrong, what can we do after the class? Okay, during class we fixed it somehow. Do you usually take after class actions, or you just leave it that way? I guess it depends on the situation, but are after class actions necessary? Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if I recently handed over a children's class because I had commitments I couldn't make that class, there was a massive handover because they're 5 years old.
Yeah.
So it's all relative to what you're doing, but they definitely need to know, watch out for this kid, he's a nightmare. This kid actually is really hyper. But like you say, not so common, but when you need to do it, it's super important.
Okay. Okay, and just some final words or tips for teachers. How can we deal with awkward situation, embarrassing situation?
Oh, there's something I'd like to mention. Obviously, English not my first language, and sometimes it happens when you go to a class and you get asked something that you know, but you're not sure how to explain. You're not sure what the rule is or something, and maybe some teachers would be like feeling uncomfortable and thinking, oh my god, what do I do? There's no problem in saying, look, I'm not sure right now, but the next time I see you, I'll have the answer, and go and find out about it if you can't do it during class or whatever, because you need to kind of let them feel like you're taking care of them. And if you come in with something that they didn't understand the last time and you have that prepared,
It looks good.
you're building up your reputation, your image.
They
if
appreciate
I can
it as
say
well.
that
That
exactly.
you've
It's
gone out of your
like
way to.
it's like, oh look, she did that in her free time
Yeah.
for me, so I obviously mean
Yep.
something, or they care about me.
Mm.
And this is just one example, you know, it might happen to a native speaker as well. I've had colleagues saying, look, I had no idea how to explain this.
It's definitely important from a psychological perspective. Don't implant a rule that's watered down, diluted, or wrong, because they're going to relate all future learning on that initial
Exactly.
rule they had. You said,
True.
but you said only say it when it's this,
Yes.
and then you've got to try and erase that memory
Yes.
and waste time doing it again.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
just get it a solid foundation
Maybe
on
if you
anything you're not
don't know
sure
it,
of.
just say, let's go back to this next week.
Okay, Nanaro, an advice for new teachers from you?
Yeah, I think you can always talk about things as well. Like if you get a first vision, you can always take the end of the class to talk about it, to talk about what it really was,
Okay,
and just change anything if you need to change it.
that's great. Yeah, of course, why not? Direct feedback from the students so that next time we
Yeah.
avoid that. Yeah, excellent. Graham, what about you?
Be yourself. If it's a difficult situation, deal with it just like you would deal with it with. Obviously, you have to be a bit more professional. It makes you angry, temper, but you just got to be calm and just express if you have a problem. And I think it's good to, if you have a real issue, to take that time at the end of the class. And for you guys in Nature, well, Paulina, when you don't know something, there's nothing wrong with saying I don't know.
Yeah.
But as long as you say you'll address it and you actually do, then they trust you. We're teachers. We're not the dictionary. So there's going to be
On my part, just to remind everyone that don't assume that if you have activities that you think are not correct or appropriate for that level, that it has to be that way. Let us know, because we can adjust the content and adapt it, in this case through the syllabus, to the students' needs, in a more generally speaking, not just for that class but in general, so that you don't struggle next time with activities and syllabus related issues.
Ludmila, do you remember we forgot to mention that maybe sometimes the teachers also choose the activities, the ones they want to do. And maybe if there is an activity that's a bit too challenging, not for the student but for the teacher, whether it's something they have no interest about, whether it's business text, something that you have no knowledge about, and you tend to just say, okay, I'm not going to do that one. What
do you think?
I think that we should challenge our students, because if you feel like your class is very easygoing, then you're not challenging the student enough.
Absolutely.
Because the student should be struggling.
Exactly.
You should be struggling.
There you go. Exactly. So thank you for this, because actually I also think that having a nice atmosphere is not because we're going to have laughs every now and then. I mean,
We're not friends.
We're what?
Well, we are friends, but we're not there to be friends. We're there to learn.
Exactly. So if they struggle is when, they struggle just because they're making the effort to learn. Okay, perfect. Okay, well, I agree with you completely. And I also think that we have to challenge the students and challenge ourselves
exactly.
as teachers. So that's a little bit extra preparation maybe, but definitely worth it.
It'll pay off, guys.
Many thanks, guys. A pleasure having you all. Great testimonials. And we'll continue next week on Friday at 12, as usual. Bye.
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 Bye.